Welcome back, baseball fans. 1979-82 Fall League draft results for the fourth round of the draft. And this is always an interesting round of the draft, mentioned before, where we know which year the team has to draft in, because it's the remaining of the 4 years. And so I actually outlined for all the teams so I can easily find out and go directly to that particular team box, and they have to take a player from that specific year. So it makes it much easier. So with the first pick in the fourth round, Toronto has to take a 79 player, and if they have a couple keepers, they can take 2 guys, and they did. So they take Larry Heisel from 79, his final year. He can still hit righties but not lefties. He'll play in the outfield along with Poquette and eventually a center fielder. And they also, with their second pick, they had the rights also to Roy Howell, so he is considered an 8th round pick, and they call it in now. So Heisel and Howell, 2 picks for Toronto in this round. Next up, your Chicago White Sox. They're looking in 1980, and they found one guy they liked, and they needed an infielder to play short in lieu of the backup Greg Pryor, and they took Stan Pappy. Not a glamorous pick by any means, but sometimes you're looking for the right fit. Fit means more. So he's a 3E10 shortstop, and he has power against lefties, and hits lefties pretty well. So they can platoon Pryor and Pappy. Not a lot to say at shortstop for the White Sox during this time. Arizona is next, and Arizona is going into the year of 81, and they also just take a single player. It's a player they had the rights to. They had the rights to Dave LaRoche, so they just, as a keeper, so they just kept him going in the year of 81. He's pretty good still. 2.49 ERA in a stint with the Yankees. I think this was the famous La Lob year, when he threw the lob to Gorman Thomas. That's on all the highlight reels. Alright, 4th pick in the round belongs to Ohio, and it'll be from 79. And they took a couple guys. They had the rights to 2, actually they had the rights to 3 guys still, and select 2 from this year of 79. It would be catcher Gary Alexander, right here. Oh, he can still hit with power against lefties. Not good defensively. And they also took Roddy Scott, who, as a switch hitter, he does actually have unbelievable that they gave him power against lefties, which is much of a slap hitter. Some years he had 0 home runs. Can't hit righties at all, but he hits lefties well, and he can play second or short. Not flashy. You're starting to see the attrition in the draft. You're not going to find all-stars once we get into the middle rounds like this. Usually, anyway. All right, the Padres, from 1982, they would take 1 player. Okay, so they didn't like who was out there. And when you find a particular year that you don't see guys draftable, then you look internally and say, what if I just improve my players? And that's what they did. And they improved John Walkenfuss. He used to just be a power hitter against lefties. But they improved it to this year, and he can hit righties pretty well too. And he's just a thunderous hitter here. And in under 200 bats, he hit 301. So it's arguably the Walkenfuss best year. John, I need a man to Walkenfuss, like from The Simpsons. First base, catcher, third, and the outfield. What's not to like? What's not to like there? All right. The Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals. And they are looking for, 79. This is the year they had the most keepers. And they took 2 guys. Made a lot of sense. To complete their pitching rotation, they took Silvio Martinez, and this would be his best year with St. Louis. In the year of 79, had a fine year, 15-game winner, 3.26 ERA, and 207 innings. He would never top that. He goes into a rotation with Bob Forsch, Steve Trout, John Fulgham, and their other player they took, because they had the rights to as well, from the year of 79 was Jerry Martin, who would have been a Cub, I believe, maybe a Philly. A Cub. So they took him from a division rival, which is very good. They needed an outfielder against lefties, and they got one. He really hits lefties well. You don't really need that. I think this will be a fun little platoon. He's in a platoon with Dane Orge. So you have Orge hitting 327 against lefties, and you got Jerry Martin coming in for defense and slugging against lefties. That's a pretty potent two-headed monster you got in left field. Yeah, you're going to hit 300 with 25 home runs. All right, next up, your Oaktown A's. The Oaktown A's needed a player from 79, and they found just one guy. Nothing flashy. They still had the rights to Mitchell Page, who really fizzles quickly from his Rookie of the Year in 77. It's now 3 years into the man's career. He's down to a C Stealer. It used to be a double A. He used to hit 300, and he used to hit 20 home runs. Now he's not doing much of anything. But for a DH, he does draw walks, and he has power on the one side there. So probably his last year in Strat. After this, it goes downhill. Just didn't work out in the long term for Mitchell Page. All right, and your Mets. I'll take a quick little break here. The 80. So they had the Mets in 1980. Oh, they got a nice player. This was a nice one. The Mets in 1980, there you go, went out and found this guy on waivers. Jose Morales was put on waivers. And the man only hit 303. It's funny, it's a 303 hitter in half a season, really, or almost half a season. But it's mostly against lefties, and so and his defense is poor, and he has pretty much just batting average, and he hits a lot of double plays. It's one of the weaker 300 hitters based on value you're going to find. But he can platoon with John Stearns, who doesn't hit lefties very well, nor has power. Or they could make Stearns a full-time DH and Stearns a full-time catcher, with Morales playing catcher if you get an injury. Dan Meyer. He could also platoon at first base with Dan Meyer. So Morales was a fun little pick for the New York Mets. All right, take a quick little break, and we'll be back with another 8 teams. All right, next up, the Colorado Rockies. They had the Commissioner Award, so they have already had an extra pick and have nailed those first 4 years. And so they're just continuing into the draft because they need 2 more players, and they will be done. And the year they go with is 1980. And this is not going to be a flashy pick at all, but again, they only have 2 more players to draft, and their roster will be full. And so they need a left-handed pitcher, either starter or relief. And if you watched the last video, you know how difficult it is now to find left-handers. So they have Pastore, Petrie, McWilliams, but they went after Bob Sykes, a starter 7 left-hander. Let's show you his proper card. This is what it looks like. Yeah, not a whole lot there, but you know, at least he's worse against lefties as a lefty, which isn't that bad. And doesn't get a lot of hits against righties. It's not pretty, folks, but it's going to a team that doesn't value pitching that much. That is your Colorado Rockies. But they got the lefty. They got it out of the way. Take your medicine now. There will be better left-handers available. It's just that the years don't necessarily match up. You'll probably find more left-handers in the largest year of 1982 because it's got the largest talent pool remaining. All right, Boston. Boston needs a guy from the year of 81, and they got themselves, they got a nice little guy here. Finally. So believe it or not, they would take into their bullpen Bill Campbell. Now, what's interesting is that he sat out last year because he had a bunch of strange splits that made him incredibly weak against lefties or righties. And yet the 81 card was with the Red Sox, and they added 2 different 81 players a year ago, so he was kind of buried in Boston's protection, so nobody could unearth this Bill Campbell. But now the Red Sox decide to turn the card in for the draft in the second year availability, and it is a great year for Bill Campbell, and it is with the Red Sox. Just 40-some-odd innings, but this is a complete pitcher finally. He doesn't get blown up by lefties or righties. It's like I think 79, it's bad over there. 80, it's bad over there. Now it's balanced. Not only that, they had the righty Stan Bonson closing last year, and now they got two, well, basically three guys who could kind of finish games. You know, Bradford had a nice year too. So they have 3 shots of who gets to be the closer with the Red Sox. Next up, your Giants. San Francisco Giants need a guy from 81, and they take one guy. This is a nice pick. This is a clever pick. Sometimes it's all about fit. I mentioned that earlier when I talked about what Stan Pappy fitting. This is actually pretty good. The Giants took, here, this guy, Dale Berra, discarded by the Pirates, but Dale is a 2-11 at third base. He's an ace stealer, and he hits lefties a little bit better than righties. Maybe he doesn't actually. But the big reason is because their default third baseman is Darrell Evans, and he is very bad defensively. So Berra can come in late innings, plus he's also your backup, your fourth infielder with Joe Morgan and Rick Burleson. So yeah, Berra is a nice backup. He'll be on the bench most of the year, while the other big three play in the infield. All right, the Big Red Machine. Cincinnati. They need a guy from 1980. Okay, and they made a deal in the offseason. This is actually, you saw Joe Morgan there. They traded Joe Morgan to the Giants for Bump Wills. And Wills was drafted away from Texas and then traded after 1 year. So the Reds said, hey, Joe Morgan's getting old. Let's get a guy, a young guy, who's a little bit like Joe Morgan, sort of, at that age at least. A 3 second baseman, not a lot of errors, good base stealer. Actually, this kind of looks like Joe Morgan's 1979 card. So he was a Texas Ranger in a full season. By 1982, he'll have a nice year in 82, but that'll be it for him. But yeah, Wills will take Joe Morgan's seat in the Red infield until they find somebody better. They lost Ron Oster to the Red Sox in the offseason. So they have, in the infield, they still have Concepcion as the best infielder. Great year for Concepcion, and of course they got that Dave McKay. And yeah, not really great infield for the Reds, but they got greatness elsewhere. All right, Texas Rangers. The Rangers need a guy from 1981, and they found one guy. Oh, yeah. Nice guy. So, boy, the Rangers have really found some nice pitching. Keepers and a new guy. So in this draft, they've already drafted Fergie Jenkins. They had Comer. They drafted John Matlack. They drafted Doc Medich. And now they drafted Danny Darwin. Now, Darwin is relief and starter throughout his career. Because he was a relief starter the year previous, I'm going to let him go to the bullpen. I'll allow Texas to have him come out of the pen because he normally would anyway, most of his career. So he's the righty in the bullpen with the 2 lefties. Lefty, righty, lefty, righty. While you've got the rest of your rotation is set. So Texas, smartly, has a nice little pitching staff out west, trying to hang with Oakland and California. Odds aren't good for the Rangers, but they're doing some smart stuff. Florida Marlins, let's see. They should be over here. An 81 player for Florida. Oh, okay. They had a nice little rookie here. So, sometimes you fall into position and draft, and the guy they took, they needed a second baseman, and lo and behold, Juan Bonilla was drafted to the Marlins in the 1981 individual season draft, and that's how you get protection for a fictional team or an expansion team like this. So they had his protection, they decided to use it, and they just took him. They didn't have a second baseman, now they do, and Bonilla is pretty good. 290 hitter. See, he would have been a Padre, but of course, you know, you can't keep all your players. Padres couldn't keep all their guys. And these expansion teams need a farm system. And so they wisely drafted him out of the 81 set. And yeah, that's a pretty clever pick there for Florida. Need and matchup. It was like when Boston got Wade Boggs because they needed a left-handed hitting third baseman. And Wade Boggs was available. Yeah, Bonilla's no Wade Boggs, but you get the idea. They needed a second baseman and it just felt perfect. All right, the Twins. They need a 1980 player. do the Twins. Okay, and so what happened with the Twins was they weren't happy with the talent pool. They didn't like their options in the year of 1980. So they said, is there a way we can make John Castino better? And they can. So they bumped up Castino's 79 card to 80 because he's a 1/3 baseman and because he has his best year at the plate hitting .302. With 13 home runs, that might be career high as well. So a solid third baseman. He was kind of like a second base, third base. Now he's a devoted third baseman, everyday player. And good to have. Great defense at third. Will help the pitching staff. We'll do Seattle and take another little break here. The Mariners need a guy from 82. Okay. Good luck for the Mariners, just like with Florida. They found in their redraft of the 82 set that they needed a relief pitcher, and they had their choice of Mike Stanton and Mike Armstrong, and so they selected Mike Armstrong. He's a little bit better. Just fell into their lap. Didn't have to search for him. Had a protection. Good stats in the year of 82 from the Kansas City Royals. He instantly becomes the closer. Look at that. A rookie closer with Darrell Jackson, Pat Zachary, and Byron McLaughlin. Not a very good bullpen, but at least a decent guy who might be able to get some saves. Good luck, Seattle. Odds are stacked against the Mariners. All right, we'll take another little break, and we'll get back with another 8 teams. All right, we're back. Houston Astros are next on the clock. The year they're looking for is 1979, and they found a guy. They found a lefty, and he was actually he missed a year, so he was technically on the retired list. Sometimes the retired list is also the rookie list. If you disappear from the league, you get put in that pile. And his stats aren't very good, but it's Jim Rooker. And he's got a 4.59 ERA. Not very good, but he pitched in that World Series for the Pirates. And he's good against lefties. If you can manage to... And he's not too terrible against righties. I think the card actually plays better than the 4.69 ERA. And they needed a lefty. It's exactly what they needed. So they have Ken Forsch, J.R. Richard, and Joe Niekro. And boom, Rooker is the lefty. Would the Pirates regret not holding on to him? I don't think so, but you never know. Detroit's next. The Tigers, they need a 1980 guy. And they found a guy. So you kind of see the piggybacking here. Once a lefty from starting pitcher gets picked in one box, the Tigers take a lefty in another box, Jim Cott. So this is what the 1980 card looks like. And again, the stats say 381. Oddly, I think Rooker's card might play better. But anyway, yeah, he's a starter 7. And yeah, that's where we're getting when it comes to getting lefties. This is what you end up with. But yeah, so you got Morris, Wilcox, Cott, and they need one more right-handed pitcher to the Tigers. Not sure the Tigers are ready yet. They'll be better in 83 and 84. It could be that it's Cleveland's division again. Anyway, the Phillies are up next. Disappointing season. Expecting them to rebound in a big way. Oh boy. This is no-brainer department. The season is 1980, the year they won the World Series, and lo and behold, they got one of their own guys from that World Series team, Keith Moreland of Feeling. Yes, Keith, 314 hitter, and with the Phillies. They have him with his big bat, mostly against righties, and they have Bob Boone with the big arm, mostly against lefties, as the platoon catching system for a Philadelphia team that is kind of antsy to get to the World Series. They've really flamed out in the previous season. All right, the Expos, probably the darling of the league now. The feel-good team. We finally think that they're building a powerhouse here, and are going to try and win. So they haven't won anything. I've never had the Expos win a damn thing, but I think this could be the turning of the point. The point of turning, or the point of no return. Yeah, well, they're going to do good. I'll just say that. So they need a 79 guy. Oh, this is so great. So the first guy, they had the rights to a guy, so they waited. They took a guy outside of their system. So Enrique Romo was actually a keeper from the Oakland A's, but Oakland had to let him go because they maxed out their 1980 guys, 1979 guys. And so the Expos jumped all over Enrique Romo in 79. He would be very instrumental to the Pirates in their World Series season. And the second player of lesser value is Mick Kelleher. He's not going to win MVP awards, but Mick's a decent Cub here, 254 hitter. Decent bat, reliable glove in multiple positions, will be the shortstop against lefties. So, smart, clever moves by the Expos team, filling out their roster. It's also a good sign that most of the talent is already in the Expos. Now they're just finishing at this point of the draft, which is a real good sign. Next up, the Cubs. The Cubs, Chicago Cubs, looking for a guy from 1980. Oh, this is a nice pick. Well, I'll tell you what, this is a case of a team that locked up left-handed pitching earlier. Because they didn't need a lefty, they needed a righty. And they also had the flexibility of Ken Holtzman. So thank Ken Holtzman for this. You see, Ken Holtzman is a starter 6, relief 3, but he pitches out of the bullpen. So the first right-handed reliever or starter they liked, they could get. And they did get. It's this guy, Reggie Cleveland. Let me show you his stats. The card with the stats on it. That's what it looks like. Starter 6, excuse me, for Reggie Cleveland. Nice year for the Brewers. He was on the retired list because he missed 1979. Yeah, if you don't have a card in the first year of the league, you can't be on waivers, so you have to go into retirement. So Cleveland will complete the rotation with Russell Krukow, Rick Waits, and Reggie Cleveland. So that's not bad for the Cubs. Not bad at all. Milwaukee Brewers. They are also a darling, sort of like the Expos. Brewers Expos are on the high side of life right now. This is their golden age of the Brewers and the Expos. So Milwaukee needs, from this year, 81. And okay, so they got on the phone with Seattle and traded them a draft token and to get the rights to 81 reliever Larry Anderson. He actually was a Seattle reliever. Mariners locked up their pitching or their bullpen, so they said, "I'll give us a token instead of a player," and that's what they did. So they ponied up the money to get Larry Anderson, and Seattle will have an extra move in the draft. So they're not done yet. They need one more. The Brewers have Caldwell, Haas, Vukovic, and Slayton, and they need one more pitcher in the bullpen. Nice move, Milwaukee. Las Vegas, lost wages. They had a nice year last year. It might have been, is it a Zenith or a Portent? We don't know. They had a guy from 1980. And they took, well, their last keeper was Fred Patek, and his best year is 1980. So they took him. He's a shortstop. It's Fred Patek. What should I say? I mean, the Kansas City soured on him, and he went to the Angels. Had some power. He had a decent Freddie Patek year. His speed is gone. Not a good shortstop platoon, but it's what it is. It's Roger Metzger platooning with Fred Patek. So, yeah, it's Las Vegas. That's okay. And the Yankees. The Yankees, desperate to get to the World Series. 82 was the year. Okay, this is a intriguing pick. It's okay. So the Yankees feel that any old right-handed pitcher will do okay for them because one of the weaknesses the Yankees seem to have is that they can't load up with lefties in the carryover league in the starting rotation. Like you can't put Righetti, Tommy John, and Guidry on the rotation. You need you can only have 3 lefties in the whole team out of the 8, and you need a reliever and a starter. So they need to find right-handed pitchers that are pretty good, and they had drafted into their system this guy, Luis Leal. He's okay. He's a number 4 starter. He's a Blue Jay. He can pitch on 3 days rest, 3.92 ERA. Takes one of Toronto's young players away from him. To add insult to injury. But the reason they're not really concerned with Leal and Caudill is because they got this fantastic bullpen. Gossett are Getty's best years, Tidrow and Leach. So they do not mind going to the bullpen when Leal and Caudill start, because they probably won't go to it much when Guidry and John start. So that's the Yankees. It's actually, I got to say, the Yankee draft is one of the best ones I've had for the Yankees. And this might be the best Yankee roster, which is really odd when you understand that none of the 76, 77, or 78 Yankee players, World Series players, comprise this team. But they seem to be loaded. All right, another quick pause, and then the final 8. Okay, the final 8 teams, beginning with Cleveland. Surprise division winner a year ago. This is a good era for them as well. Let's see what they need here, the Indians. They would need there they are, 79. And they took one guy from 79, and it was one of their keepers, and it was one of the keepers' best years. It's Rick Manning. Kind of off and on, back and forth from good year to bad year. You want him to be a 1 if you can, and he is an ace stealer. 259 is kind of a high mark for him. Full season. The previous and the years before and after are not very good for Rick, but this is a nice one. He becomes the center fielder, and boy, this team looks good. This Indian team doesn't have any weaknesses. They have Delaney hitting 340 in left, Manning in center, and Del Unser and Joe Charbonneau in the corner right field. That's a pretty talented outfield group. Portland. The expansion Portland team on the clock needing a player from 81. Oh, great pick. Great pick. He was on waivers just sitting there. I mentioned the Cubs lucked out in getting Reggie Cleveland because he was right-handed. Well, Portland did even better. They needed a right-handed pitcher to finish their rotation, and they got this guy. Jim Beattie from the 81 box, starter 6, 2.96 ERA, and an outstanding card, no home runs, not much of anything. This is an excellent starting pitcher. He will join Jerry Royce, his best Dodger year, Randy Lurch, he's okay, Eric Rasmussen's best year, and Beattie. Portland won this division a year ago, and they're poised to do it again. Am I building an expansion powerhouse in the Pacific Northwest? That would be interesting. They got swept in the divisional round a year ago by the Dodgers. All right, next up, the Pirates. Oh, the number 1 seed of the National League a year ago. We are family, sister sledge. They were making World Series tickets, and then they got bounced by the Atlanta Braves in the playoffs. So Pittsburgh, unfortunately, yeah, this is their last chance to win a World Series. That 79 squad, and they need a 1980 player. Oh, they got a nice one. They went straight to the highest OPS guy on the board in 1980, and they found this guy. Al Woods was a Blue Jay. And the Blue Jays fell asleep at the wheel and let this guy get away. And I think they did because he doesn't have a long career. But this is clearly his best year, hitting 300. And this is a full-time player. Hits lefties better than righties. So that's full-time DH on the Pirates. And I could see this guy fitting in really nicely with Dave Parker and Willie Stargell. Those 3 guys. So, yeah, there's some nice Pirates here. Al Woods is a fine addition. They didn't get Lee Lacy. The Reds got him, and they still ended up with a 300 hitting Al Woods. So that's not a bad consolation prize, particularly when you're in the 4th round of the draft. And Lee Lacy was taken in the 1st round of the draft by the Reds. So that's the Pirates' way of saying, mess with me, I'll mess back. Kansas City. They need a guy from 1980. They found a guy. They found a guy they used to have, too. This is kind of reunited. Jim Wolford signs back up. He actually was a Giant by this point, but he played the middle 70s with the Royals, and they called him up and said, you want to come back? And he's like, sure, I'll come back. I'll platoon with Claudell Washington. So Claudell's a lefty with some speed, Wolford, a righty with some defense, And they will platoon to the left with Otis and Cowens in the outfield. Nice pick for Kansas City. You're seeing the World Series potential combatants making nice picks. It was the Yankees, the Phillies, the Pirates, the Kansas City. These are the World Series teams. They're making really nice picks, trying to get into that tournament again. All right, Atlanta. They need a guy from 1980, so they got two here, I believe. Yes. They got two guys, not real sexy. The first guy they took is Ted Cox. And he's simply a third base against lefties with 243. He's a 3 third baseman, so they have threes at least defensively with Frias and Royster. They also have Lenny Randall from the left side, and Bavacqua's now can platoon at first with Mayberry. And they also took Jeff Burroughs from that same year. He becomes their 7th round pick. And he'll be a DH. They don't need him to play the outfield. But Burroughs is an everyday player, pretty balanced. Because in left field, they have this guy, Gene Roof, with Dale Murphy and Matthews. So, yeah, Ted Cox was the best defensive third baseman they could find. And that's that. Baltimore. They need a guy from 1980. And they took just the one guy they needed, their last keeper, from the year of 1980. It is catcher Rick Dempsey. And this is, of course, a no-brainer for the Orioles. He would, the Dipper would play for them during this entire period. This might be his high watermark batting average in the year of 1980. Has a -3 arm. He'll have a -4 arm in, I think, 81, but his bat is terrible. So they went with the 1980, and they're calling it Dempsey's best year. He'll platoon with Joe Nolan. And they have Pat Kelly at DH. And, yeah, Baltimore is just doing Baltimore stuff. If you've gone to a World Series, you're probably going to go back to it, or you're thinking you are. So 2 years ago, it was Boston and Philadelphia. They both think they're going back to the World Series. Then it was Baltimore and Cincinnati. They think they're going back to the World Series. And the World Series that just played are these guys and those guys. They think they're going back to the World Series. Throw in the Yankees, the Pirates, and there's going to be a really fierce competition this fall for this wonderful carryover league. Let's see here. The Angels need a guy from 81. Oh, that's a nice pick. They actually got a rookie from their own farm system. I'd love to see when that happens. They needed a starter. Boom, Mike Witt. His first good year in California. Mike Witt, 81 Angel. 320 rate, 129 innings. He'll join Nolan, Frost, and Baumgarten, which means John Curtis can now go to the bullpen where he'll probably be used more efficiently. Setting up Mark Clear. So that's good news for the Angels. Pitching's not that great, but the offense is insane. The Dodgers will wrap up the 4th round of the draft, needing a player from 1979, right there. And they didn't waste much time. They took their last keeper from the year 79. And that, of course, is their shortstop, Bill Russell. 333. This is probably the best defense he's going to have from here on out, as he'll turn into a 4 pretty soon. It'd be pretty ordinary, I have to say. But at least here, he's a nice little player. He still has the great base running and bat handling. Not the base stealer. Hits lefties better than righties. He's not going to be a 2. That's a fairy tale. So that's what they're going to have to live with at short. But again, he's in the infield with the traditional guys: Garvey, Lopes, Ensay, and Russell. So they're together, trying to go back to back. This is the world champion team, and oh boy, they still look good. They didn't do anything wrong, and they added Honeycutt into the 3-hole in the rotation. So, yeah, they're going to make it just as difficult for everybody. They actually might be a little better thus far. That's it through 4 rounds of the draft. So, we'll have a 5th round pick on the clock for fun. And the fun part of the draft now is the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th rounds are dedicated to a specific year. So I can focus on one box of cards, put the other 3 boxes to a side. The 5th round is 1982. Then you have the 6th round is 1981. The 7th round is 1980. And the 8th round is 1979. You want your 8th round pick to come from the weakest box because it's only a 1-year contract. So even if it's a bad player, you only have to worry about it for 1 year. The 5th round that I'm going to be doing next is a critical year because the player you signed is going to be on your team for 4 years unless you trade him or cut him or waste a draft choice and replace him in next year's draft. So 5th round, very important round of the draft. Thanks for checking this out. This won't even be needed anymore because we don't have any more keepers. That's all done. Now we're focusing on individual years. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.